I feel like this one is going to be a little bit controversial, and I personally agree with it, but I know there are a lot of people out there that don't. You can call it basic, you can call it whatever you want, and that is a really big tip when it comes to making your space look very eclectic, collected. Hello you guys, and welcome back to my channel. Today's video is going to be a super fun one. As per usual, we are going to be breaking down my top 10 tips and tricks that I follow whenever designing or putting together a space. And in this list, there aren't a bunch of very obvious ones. They're ones that I just sort of keep in the back of my brain whenever I'm putting together spaces, pulling things together, and shopping for my home. So we're going to be going around my home today and looking at a bunch of different vignettes and things, and we're going to be talking about some different things that I do to make my home look very designer, of course without spending a bunch of money. So I hope you get a lot of ideas and inspiration from this video. With that being said, I did want to make the disclaimer that of course a lot of these, maybe all of them, are subjective for lots of people, but for my specific style and how I like to decorate things, this set of 10 rules works really well for me. If you like something, if it makes you happy, then definitely decorate that way. I am not trying to change your style or anything, but I often get the question of how I put spaces together. So I thought this would be a really good starting point, especially if you are new to decorating. And with that being said, make sure that you subscribe down below. I looked at my analytics this morning and 95% of you guys are not subscribed and you keep watching my videos. If you keep coming back for more content and you like what you see, definitely consider subscribing down below. We are super close to 1,000 subscribers and I am very excited to be growing this little family here. But I believe that is everything. We are going to go ahead and get started. The first tip is something that I talk about a lot on my channel, and that is contrasting your materials and utilizing contrast to the best of your ability. In the past, when I was first getting into design, I always thought that the best designs were very light and bright with very little contrast. I just thought that whites and grays were the perfect combination of colors to make a space feel really bright and airy. While that is true, I feel like it is very important to add in some contrasting materials. And as you guys have seen my channel develop over the past probably 6 months or so, I started incorporating black into more of my designs. I really love wood tones and light colors, but there's something about that black that just really rounds the space, adds very nice contrast, and makes the room feel very calm, very collected, and just very high-end in general. I feel like it just looks so good. The first thing that comes to mind in my own home is the gallery wall that I have in my living room. If you guys didn't see that video, I'll have it linked down below. It will show you all the different tips and tricks that I have for putting together your own. And I decided to make a really big statement on that wall with some very slick black frames that I got from Amazon, and I feel like it looks so good. It really draws your eye up to those high ceilings and it really just grounds the space together. And I don't know what it is, there's something about white and like wood materials and a metal sort of black color. They just all look so good together, and I feel like you can also incorporate this into lots of different styles. The obvious one is like a farmhouse look, that's very popular, or if you like more of a traditional classic look like I do, something very antique and sort of old world vibes, those colors also play together really nicely. And in general, when you're styling, if you're styling up against a white wall, maybe use a darker color or a different color. That way everything doesn't blend together. Another thing that I feel like a lot of people don't talk about is like matching bed sets. So like the bed frame and the 2 end tables, dresser, desk. There's so many sets of things like that from IKEA where they all just mismatch your materials a little bit. In fact, in our living room, we don't have one identical end table. Nothing matches, but they're all in that same color scheme that allows them to work really nicely together. So don't feel like you need to match all of your nightstands and match all of your lamps. You can play around with different materials and just make sure that it still fits your style. And I feel like this is a really easy thing to implement, whether you're talking about paint, furniture, decor. It really applies to anything when it comes to decorating a room. Number 2 is to avoid chrome and shiny silver finishes. I cannot stress this enough. Maybe it's just me. You guys know that I have had health problems in the past like 4 years. I've been to my fair share of doctors and hospitals and things. For some reason, that cold, shiny chrome, it just looks very medicinal to me. I don't know why. It just really reminds me of that. Also, I feel like chrome and silver finishes just look a little bit more cheap. You guys know I love my aged brass tones, and those are super popular right now. There are so many designers that utilize aged brass in pretty much all of their spaces. And this is another one of those tips that, again, is going to be a little subjective. Some people love silver. I personally really like warmer tones. I like things to be fairly neutral for the most part, but if I'm going to choose a metal, it's either going to be brass or like a black or something in that realm. I feel like silver can just be very cold. It can be very harsh. Brass and black really just give that sort of lived in, very classic, traditional feel. And you can do it in very big doses. You can do it in very small doses. And another thing I wanted to mention with this, if you find something that's silver, maybe a silver frame or a silver mirror or something, there are so many products out there that you can actually spray paint it yourself and make it look like an aged sort of brass antique, or you can spray paint it black. There are many different things that you can do. One of the biggest parts of making your home look super designer without spending a lot of money is knowing how to thrift and upcycle things. And a spray painting project would probably be a really good beginner sort of introduction to the world of DIY. That way we don't need to deal with silver or shiny chrome finishes. Now, number 3, I feel like is a super critical when it comes to decorating a smaller space, or if you have very tall ceilings, to really accentuate them and allow them to make a statement, and that is to utilize your vertical space. A lot of times I feel like design is very horizontal. A lot of people just like to figure out the furniture and all of the different little knickknacks they want to put on end tables and consoles. While that's very important, it is also very important to utilize your wall space. And I'm going to give the example of my gallery wall again. If you guys have been following my channel, you can probably go back and look at some of like my Christmas decorating videos. I had this little sort of cathedral farmhouse window. It wasn't really my style anymore, and I wanted to do something a little bit different. But the main thing that I didn't really like about it and about the placement is it really didn't fill up that space very well. It didn't accentuate the roof line. It didn't accentuate how tall those ceilings really are. And in doing the gallery wall, I was able to take up a lot more space without it being too crowded, and I was able to really drive it up the wall to make it seem that much bigger. And it's not just me. I've had multiple family members say that they just really think that the gallery wall makes the room seem so grand. It really just fills up that space. It makes it feel like it was meant for that space, and that is a really big tip when it comes to making your space look very eclectic, collected. The more you can take decor and sort of fit it to your space, the more personalized and high-end it is going to look. And sometimes utilizing vertical space isn't directly on the wall. Maybe it's a floor lamp that sort of takes up a little bit of the vertical space and allows your eye to sort of bounce up and down in between the room, and it just makes the room feel more grand. So if you want to be a designer, make sure you're not thinking just horizontal, you're also thinking vertical. Number 4 is a very simple styling tip that I feel like preached on my channel for so long, is styling with books. The obvious way to style with books is to put them on bookshelves with fun little bookends. You can really thrift some very fun, very unique bookends, even at like antique stores and things like that. Another way that I really like to use books is I like to stack them up against things. Like in my living room, I did style with some books in there for Easter. I have them leaned up against a little brass lamp, and then I have some little bunnies to sort of act as a little bookend. Another thing I really like to do is take books and stack up a couple on top of each other, and then maybe put a frame on top or a little potted plant. And the reason I like to style with books is, first of all, it just looks very lived in. There's something about books that just makes a space feel very classic and warm, and not to mention it can give your decor some height. So if you have a very, very small plant, it might be a good idea to prop it up on a couple books just to make it look a little bit bigger and take up a little bit more space. And personally, I like to style with more neutral books, more old looking books. A very good place to find those types of things is at thrift stores. You can go and there are shelves, sometimes aisles of books. And a very big tip when it comes to this is if the book has a little plastic sleeve cover on it, you can sort of pull that back and look at the base of the book. I very rarely will keep the cover that comes with it because I really like that old sort of muted color on the actual book. look on the inside. And another thing that I really love is a lot of those books have like the words on the spine in a sort of gilded tone, so it just adds to that antique look and makes it look really authentic. Another place that I found some really old books is like estate sales or yard sales, garage sales, things like that. People are getting rid of books all the time, and it can be a very inexpensive, very practical way to decorate. So I feel like this tip is very simple to incorporate. Number 5 on my list is to create vignettes. This is another thing I talk about a lot on my channel, but when you can group things together in a space or on a table, that it makes it look so collected and put together. Not to mention, you can implement this in pretty much any space, and you can do it with practical items. Like maybe in a bathroom, you put a little bar of soap, a little plant, and maybe a little soap dispenser, and you can put it on a little wooden tray or anything like that. Grouping things together looks so expensive and high-end, very sophisticated. I don't know what it is, but it just looks very curated. Another really good place to make vignettes is if you have a long table, whether that be a big cabinet or a media console, a side table, a sideboard. I find that creating 2 vignettes on either side of 2 or 3 items, depending on what I'm putting together, just makes it look very elegant and styled. When I think about this, I think of our media cabinet in our living room. I used to have a fishbowl in the middle, and then I would try to put like maybe 3 pieces of decor on each side to balance it out. I think I had the right idea to balance things out with varying heights. If I have something tall on this side, I need something tall on this side, but something different. But when I finally cracked the code of putting a little vignette on the left side with the fishbowl and the little plants, and then doing a little vignette on the right side, it just seemed so much more balanced, a lot more minimal, and it just made the space feel cleaner and keep your decor very functional and intentional. Number 6 is antiques. I love to go antiquing. I love thrift shopping. I love going to yard sales, garage sales, estate sales. I love to purchase things secondhand because they have so much character, whether that be an old book, maybe it's an old vase or planter. I've seen so many different old mirrors and frames. There's just so many things out there that have so much character because they are so old. And again, this is another thing that's very subjective. I love the way that it makes my home not feel so cold. It really brings in a lot of warmth. It just gives that, again, just very lived in feel. I love the way they look. And another thing I love about antiquing is you can never get something identical to what somebody else has. You are always going to find something different. I personally love antiques that have a lot of like a very patina sort of look to them, very weathered. So I always keep my eye out for very inexpensive things like that that are very unique and one of a kind. And sometimes it's nice to get that plant from Target that the girl online has. Those are fun. It's also fun to have one of a kind pieces for your own space. So don't be afraid to go out and look for things that are very unique and have a lot of character and just very different from anything you'd find in store. Number 7 is to use natural materials. You guys know I talk about Jenna Pierce on here all the time. I love her channel here on YouTube. I can have her linked down below if you've never seen her channel before, but I know a lot of you guys watch her as well. And she talks a lot about incorporating very natural materials into your space. Having a variety of these materials makes the space look super eclectic. It makes it feel very warm and gives it a liveliness that honestly nothing else can. And there are so many different materials to choose from. There's marble, that's super big right now, especially very heavy veining if you really like that look. There's wood, quartz, all different kinds of stone. Dried florals can be a natural material because they're dried real flowers. And there's just a variety of different things to choose from. That way it can go with your style. But I've tried to do this all throughout my home. I have a little wood dough bowl that I found from a seller on Facebook Marketplace, and she made all of them herself. It has a beautiful patina on it. It's very aged looking. Vases can be a really good thing to incorporate. I have some vases that I made into a sort of faux antique, faux aged vessel look, and they have this very stone-like and very ceramic heavy feel to them. Those look really great. And across the board, you just see so many designers all all over Instagram that use these guidelines. I think of very like minimalistic spaces where they have a pop of wood to sort of be a nice contrast and anchor everything together, or a very large statement piece that has lots of texture on it. There are so many different ways to incorporate this into your home, and the great thing, as I sort of mentioned a little bit earlier, is that not all of these materials are super old. There are so many faux antiques that you can find at places like Hobby Lobby, Joann's, places like that are very inexpensive, but they give you that high-end look for way less. So when you're out looking for decor for your home, maybe keep your eye out for things like stone and marble and wood, very earthy elements that are going to make your space feel very alive, make it feel very bright, and give it a very organic, natural feel. So we already talked about utilizing vertical space and how not to just focus on the horizontal space, but number 8 is to actually utilize the middle of your room. There are a lot of times where I'm very tempted to go into a room and put all the furniture against the wall, have room in the middle for people to walk around. While that can be great, I think utilizing things and bringing things off of the wall in the middle of your space is going to be very beneficial and create a very nice flow. Of course, this doesn't work in every single space. For example, in my room at school, I have a very small room, so it doesn't make sense to per se put the bed in the middle of the room. It just doesn't make any sense for the flow, and it just would be too cramped. So you really have to look at your space and experiment. Another thing that's great about home decor and design is that you can always learn things, you can always try different things, move things around and see what works best for you, because that's what matters ultimately. This is especially handy in a very open concept sort of space. A lot of people will use a couch to sort of separate the living room from the kitchen or something like that, from the dining room, and it just creates a very lived in, very cozy feel, and it makes it feel a lot more designer. I mean, imagine if you went into a room and every single piece of furniture was up against a wall. That is not going to provide the best flow. Of course, there's going to be a lot of space and it's going to be really nice for those sorts of things, but if you really want your home to look very elevated, I would definitely recommend moving around your furniture a little bit and trying to put things more in the middle of a space to sort of create your own natural visual walkways, help the room to flow a little bit and make everything feel very cohesive. I feel like this one is going to be a little bit controversial, and I personally agree with it, but I know there are a lot of people out there that don't. Number 9 is word signs are out. I've sort of hinted at this in recent videos, sort of talking about how signs with big words on them, just any words in general, are really sort of exiting the scene in the design world. Landscape paintings, you guys know, are super popular right now, and word signs are just kind of sitting on the back burner, and I kind of agree with this. To me, if you are trying to make a very designer space, having word signs is going to make it feel a little bit less sophisticated. You know what I'm saying? And again, by no means am I telling you to tear off any signs in your home that have words on them. If you love them, keep them up. But if you really want a very sophisticated, elevated, classic look, word signs are really not the move. Not to mention, I find that landscape paintings can be a lot more versatile. Like if you have a sign with specific words on it that only work for a specific holiday or something, obviously you change that out a lot. I love landscapes because you can get them in very neutral tones that you can keep up all year round. You can move around to different places in your home. You can layer them with different things. There's just so much versatility with them. And in general, a lot of designers really don't use words of any kind in their spaces. It just makes it feel very serene, very calm. And personally, I love the way that landscapes look. I love nature. And if you are like me and you like to bring in that very naturalistic, organic feel, words are not going to do that the same way that a landscape painting would. So again, I know this one is controversial. It was a really big trend when farmhouse was a really big trend. But if you want your space to look very high-end, I didn't mean to rhyme there. If you want your space to look very high-end, removing those word signs, I think is going to make a very big difference. And lastly, number 10 is a very simple one. It's also something I talk about all the time. And again, a little bit controversial depending on where you stand. So I always recommend a neutral color scheme. And that is not to say I don't add in pops of color every once in a while. If you guys saw my most recent video, I love to add in pops of color for different seasons, but I like to do it very minimally. But for the most part, when I'm putting together a space, I like to find neutral decor pieces. Number one, I find it very, very calming. It just gives the room a very serene feel. It's not too busy. Second, going with a neutral color scheme can be a lot more inexpensive. And this is gonna vary from person to person. I will personally get tired of certain colors, certain pops of colors after they're out for a while, and switching that out can be very expensive. It can be very exhausting to get to a place where I like it, especially statement pieces like a couch or something. Let's be honest, I'm going to be more likely to be sick of a mustard yellow couch than a gray or a cream or a brown color. Something like that, it just makes more sense to go neutral. You can call it basic, you can call it whatever you want, but I just really love the way that this feels, and there's so many different things you can do with it, especially if you love nature like myself. Those wood tones, those creams and greenery, things like that are very, very calming. They're versatile, they're fun to switch around, they're easy to switch around, and when you're out shopping, it's a lot easier to shop for decor. And if you get rid of one thing, you don't need to get rid of another thing in your space or replace it. There's just so much more versatility that I've found. And with that being said, I do like to add pops of color for different holidays. I like to use red for Christmas and things like that. But overall, when I'm looking for decor, I like to look for very neutral, timeless pieces that I am never going to get sick of. All right, you guys, that is the end of today's video. I really hope you guys learned a few things, maybe got some ideas for your own home that are very attainable. I like to make these videos seem very approachable. I'm not gonna ever go out and tell you to spend a lot of money on a very high-end trend or anything like that. I really like to make videos that are approachable and make it easy for you guys to do things by yourself, because it is definitely doable. It just takes a little bit of learning. And if you have any design tips yourself or just shopping tips and tricks that you tend to follow, leave them in the comments below. I'd be very, very curious to look, and I feel like it'd be very beneficial to our little community here for even more tips and tricks that you tend to follow. And I hope you enjoyed the video. Give it a thumbs up. It really supports my channel and it allows the algorithm to push my video to more people, and I would really appreciate it. Make sure that you subscribe down below for more videos like this, home decor, DIY, homemaking on my channel every single week. And I hope you guys know how appreciative I am of you guys watching this video and hanging out with me today. I hope you guys are having a wonderful day so far, and I cannot wait to see you in my next video. Bye!